I was born in Colima, Mexico. We immigrated to the United States in 1976. I was about 45 days old, and we ended up in an avocado ranch, living in a small trailer. At first, it was myself, my mother, my father, and throughout the years, they started bringing my 4 brothers from Mexico. My father worked for the ranch itself. He was the sole caretaker of the ranch. It was, at that time, I believe it was anywhere between 5 to 8 acres. My mother worked as a house cleaner for the owners. We'd come out and help my dad. We'd whack underneath the trees and help take care of them. We'd pick them when it was time. We'd wear the bag with the folded ends, and you just climb on the ladders and just start cutting them off and throwing them in your bag and then dropping them off at the wooden bin. I did not know English. The ranch owner's child, she was older than myself. I was her baby. She would call me her baby. She would sit with me and try to teach me English. This is where the owner's daughter would sit with me on these rocks, and she would teach me how to speak English. So I have a fond memory of that. I was one of very few Hispanic children there, and it was hard at first. You get teased, called beaner, and you have lice and that sort of stuff. That was difficult just because you knew you were different. But you didn't want to be. But I think the hardest part was going to that special class where they taught you English, because it was embarrassing. So, because I still remember crossing the border and how hard that was and how risky it was. And the fact that they did that for us was huge. Just seeing them every day just struggle and just putting food on the table, it just made me strive to want more out of life and be able to, maybe one day reciprocate that to them when they're older. And so I credit a lot of that determination to them.
I'm very happy for my daughter is now. I very happy.
Yeah.
I'm very happy. I drive in my car. We come in for the street in the corner. We stop at the light. When the immigration coming on the outside and the right side, coming in the right there and look at me, and after the light, when this green the light, putting the license after for the stop. I make the stop over there for the right side, and taking me, taking my wife, and taking we taking a little car over there for wait for the bus, and maybe in 2 hours coming the bus, it take it for San Isidro.
I kind of blame myself. I remember being in the car and I stood up. I wasn't seat belted in. I stood up and there was a patrol car next to us, and I guess they saw me stand up, which caused them to pull us over. And so at least that's what I remember. I was very young, but that's the portion I remember, and that has stuck with me for so many years. And I just remember them taking my dad away, seeing these men in uniform, taking my dad. I mean, the image is there. I think I just didn't quite understand what was going on at the time. My 4th grade teacher had always remained in contact with me. And she always asked me, what is it that you want to do in your life? And at certain points, I didn't know. I kind of had curiosity towards law enforcement. She told me, you have to choose something in your life that you really want to do and follow through with it. Do you know what that is? And at that point, I had made my decision into law enforcement. And so she sat down with me and said, let's look at this. Let's figure it out. And she was very gung-ho about it. She goes, it's a respectable career, is what she said. At the time I was 18. She said, but in Long Beach, they're hiring at 18. And so we actually took a trip up to Long Beach to take this exam. And it was an English comprehension exam, being ESL and all. I was kind of like, are we sure? And she said, yeah, let's just go and see how you do. And so she took me up there, and I took the exam, and, you have to wait until you get your results. And, of course, I didn't do very well. But she said, that's okay, because we can work on this. We can fix it. And she was just a champion. Being ESL, it's difficult. I took at least 3 written exams for 3 different agencies, and the scoring was roughly about the same. I took my courses at the community college, and from there, my scores started going up every single time I took the exam, and until eventually I got hired. And so I think for my parents, it was a little taken aback because you don't see women in law enforcement. And I think, throughout the years being here in the United States, I don't think they ever saw a female in a law enforcement uniform. It was mainly males. So for them, it was culturally impossible for me to do that. And so I think in their minds, they were like, it's just a phase. They just thought I was crazy. I don't think they thought I was actually gonna do it or complete it.
Por eso aquel policía que es policía, se gana, está peligrando a morir, está arriesgando su vida. Y eso por una parte nos da gusto porque nos cubre, nos está cuidando a todos. ¿Verdad? Está al tanto para cuidar el pueblo, la ciudad.
Well, when I first started in patrol, there was this huge mistrust in the Hispanic community, mainly because they didn't want to be deported. We had migrant workers who were getting robbed, and they were just not reporting it. And it was out of that fear. And, migrant workers don't have bank accounts. They didn't trust the banks. They carried all this money on them. And so they were easy victims. And it was during that time where things started to change, where the sheriff's department started to say, we're not going to be deporting. We want victims to be victims, and we want them to report it. And so we can do something about it. And so things slightly started to change. But to get the community to trust you on that was something else. You're talking about years of a practice, right? And how are you going to dispel that? And so for me, it was easy for me to just go to the community, a certain area, we used to call Little TJ, and I'd just sit there and just talk. I'd say hi to somebody, and they'd kind of look at me side-eye and go, okay, and just start walking faster. But once in a while, I would get somebody to talk back to me, and I, start those conversations with them. And, I'd let them know, like, hey, we don't do that anymore, and just kind of getting that message. I'd also do community presentations and talk about that. It started, you started seeing the Hispanic community change the way they thought about law enforcement. And it was great. I mean, just seeing that look in their faces change from worry to like, oh yeah, they feel comfortable, and they start telling you things. And once you got the wave and not the finger, you were good. And then when I got promoted to lieutenant, then you just kind of go, really? Wow, I made it here. And I took it as being grateful and just, okay, let's do this, let's learn this. As a community, the diverse communities out there, different people in different walks of life, you know, understanding different cultures, you know, and just getting out there and just being part of the community and making a change. As small as these changes are, in the long run, in my career, I feel like they've all helped our department develop and get better. Get past yourself. You can do it. The biggest hurdle is going to be yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for help from anyone. If you're not afraid to ask for help, you're going to find it. We're all family. You know, we all work for different departments. We have different policy and procedures and whatnot. But ultimately, we all have that same goal, which is we want to do better for our community and we want to help. And that includes each other. Super grateful. We've had that conversation of where would I be had they not made that decision to bring us here? What would I be doing? And we've talked about it, and you know, she's like, I don't know what would have happened to our family. It's scary to think about, but we were lucky enough to get here.